Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name is Carver. Jacob is unavailable for us tonight, but we have one of our besties back, Brian Straub, to help us cover the first leg against Atalanta at home just this past week. And then at this past weekend, we have the Topspiel in the Bundesliga against Redbull Leipzig. And Brian's going to help me cover those two. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Kind of like what we were talking about offline. Got a new little cat in the house, so that's always interesting. Kitten energy now, and we're covered in snow here. And the results for our beloved club haven't been that bad. So
Yeah,
all in all, life's pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we're both cat families over here, proud cat families. I'm
Proud,
glad to hear
proud.
that you got a new one in the house here. Yeah, where do we want to start here? Take it back to Atalanta. First meeting between the two sides in exactly, I think it's like 8 years now. Back in the round of 32 in the Europa
Mm.
League in this 2017-18 season, when we
Right.
were down 2-1 against them, and eventually came back and won 3-2 with a 91st minute winner. Do you remember who was scoring that winner?
Oh, I don't remember.
Michi Batshuayi,
That's
who
right.
is now
You're
at
right. You're right.
Eintracht
You're right.
Frankfurt. That was a fun loan spell with him. I remember at the time, a lot of people were, including myself, were wanting to have him
Yeah.
here as a permanent signing because he was just on fire and he was a very fun character to have on the team. But yeah, nonetheless, another meeting between us and Atalanta here in European leagues here, this time in the Champions League in the knockout round. This is the first leg victory by two or more goals, whether at home or away, has been enough for Borussia Dortmund to advance to the next round of a European competition in the last 19 of 20 cases. Last time that we didn't have enough was in the 1987 season versus Brugge when they actually came back to win. But nonetheless, we're in a pretty good position here
Very much
against
so.
Atalanta. Again, 2-0 win at home. Pretty solid performance. Was there any thoughts that you had going into this one?
Going into it, I mean, we kind of talked about it on our show. I mean, when you look at their back line, I was thinking that it would be a bit more difficult. They do have the likes of Scalvini, Orion Kosunu, who played for
Mm-hmm.
Leverkusen. He was quite good for them. So, I mean, I definitely didn't think it was going to be an easy game. And Atalanta as a whole is not an easy opponent. I believe at the time, prior to the game in Serie A, they'd only conceded about 21 goals. So their
Mm-hmm.
defensive record was pretty good, despite them sitting fifth or sixth or something like that. But overall, I mean, this wasn't going to be necessarily an easy opponent. I know that they had quite a few injuries up front as well. De
Yeah.
Ketelare wasn't able to start, so I think they had Skamaka up front, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were a bit lighter up front, but even so, I feel like they created a few chances that were quite threatening. But going into the game, once obviously we got going, I thought it was a good performance overall. Keeping the clean sheet is very important. I'm a sucker for the front two. I've been screaming from the rooftops for Girassi and Bayer to play in a front two together.
Mm.
It paid dividends. So it's like it's just good that that was functioning well. Both of them scoring, obviously, very very awesome. Even though Byers was like almost over the goal, he
Yeah.
like
He tried his best to miss that one.
yeah he did, but hey, he got it. And anyone who listens to our show knows I'm the biggest Maxi Bayer fan there is. So
Mm.
I'm just so happy to see him doing as well as he is.
Yeah, Ketelare, I forgot that he was actually injured as well, and it looks like he's not going to be available for this reverse fixture as well.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunate for Atalanta, very, very fortunate for Borussia Dortmund.
Truth.
You mentioned Kusanu, and he got absolutely dunked on early on by Girassi in this game. I was a bit
Yes.
surprised at that. And then the other side of that for Dortmund, just to go through the lineup real quick, be 3-4-2-1, and Brandt kind of hopping in the hole at times for that front
Yeah.
two, like you mentioned here.
Yeah.
So Kobel in goal, Ben Sabaini slotting in the left with Schlotterbeck unavailable, Anton, and then a first start for Reggiani. Very young center back. Was he 18, if I'm not mistaken? And
17, 18,
17.
something like that.
The midfield across the line, we pretty standard at this point of Svensson, Mecha, Bellingham, and Rierson. Branton at the hole, like we mentioned, and then Girassi and Bayer up top. Yeah, we just picked up right where we left off against Mainz, playing to our strengths, getting Rierson into space down the right-hand flank, picking out crosses, met with a towering header from Girassi early on. Girassi dropping into midfield, and Atalanta, whenever they did follow him, there'd be space opening up from behind for those 210s, whether it's Brandt or Bayer, to find space to run into behind them. Outside of that, that first half was pretty solid. I think we kept Atalanta at bay. Like you mentioned, there was a moment or two where they were getting in front of goal, but I think they had 55, 56% possession in this game, and they still only generated an XG of just under zero point 0.5 compared to what was ours,
Uh,
2.1, and they only had 17 touches in our penalty box compared to our 29 and theirs as well. So, of course, we're at home, we're going to be a bit more dominant, but this was a very encouraging performance, especially with just midweek football. And we're going into a very difficult stretch of games that we've been previewing the past few weeks in European football, but also domestically as well. Dortmund have a
right.
lot of tough opponents coming up, and it's going to keep going as well for these next few weeks. But this was a very, very solid showing. And once Dortmund went up 2-0, I felt like we were pretty much coasting for the most part, not taking too many risks against the ball. Atalanta didn't have many ideas to break us down as the game went further on. Pretty encouraging
Mhm.
performance, like I mentioned. Yeah. Anything that you wanted to touch on for this game?
No, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, it's a solid performance. Getting that 2-0 to start off, I guess this double header is a great start. I think we just need to see more of the same.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably see some rotation. I think perhaps we'll see Silva start in this game just because I think, with Bayern coming up as well and him performing as well as he did as a sub in the game against Leipzig, I think he might get his chance. We don't
Yeah.
really have too many options in defense, so we probably will see similar sort of lineup. You did mention Reggiani. I think, in particular, from him, what we saw in this first matchup against Atalanta, fairly solid showing for a center back who's kind of just, getting thrown into the thick of it.
Yeah.
So, straight up from youth football. So, it's like, yeah, I mean, we did the best we could in that game, and I don't think we could have asked for more. I definitely thought, like, when we did our predictions, it was going to be like maybe a 2-1 or something like that. I
Yeah.
did think that they might slip one through. But considering, like you mentioned, the Catalare probably still not available, I think their attack should be fairly tame again in the second game, even though it's away from home. So, yeah, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah. The decision making from some of the Atalanta players, like Scamacca in particular, was, I mean, great for us, but I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't really help them out much whenever he was
Hmm.
trying to put these big sweeping balls from left to right,
Right.
and it was hard for them to produce any decent build up play. But also, I just got to give a
Right.
shout out to the back line of those three. I mean, we're missing Emre Can, we're missing Nico Schlotterbeck, we're missing. I mean, I know Niklas Sula is not been much of any solid performer throughout the season, but we're still missing another player like him.
But he's a
Big
pro.
players in
Yeah.
this team. Yeah, yeah. And Kovac doesn't have much as a choice at the moment with Filippo Mane
Right.
also out, but I appreciate him showing trust in our youth players like Reggiani, like Mane, and then he's going to be hopefully coming back in the next few weeks. And for
Hmm.
us to get a clean sheet against a side like Atalanta with that back three, very, very impressive. Ben Sabini, some monster tackles this game in our own
Absolutely.
penalty box as well. So very, very impressive for them. And outside of that, too, I mean, Joe Bellingham just continues to raise his ceiling, continues to
Yep.
be very, very impressive in midfield. Him, the double pivot between him and Mecha, but
Yeah.
bossing the midfield at times, being almost alone and covering so much space, not making many mistakes with the ball, just maturing day by day, game by game. And I knew that was going to happen, but I'm glad that more people are coming around to it. And for only him being in his first season, I'm impressed that he's already at the spot that he's at.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned Job as well because there's obviously I mean it's obvious that there's going to be talk about comparisons to Jude and all that stuff, but I feel like he is taking his own unique path because
Yeah,
his defensive game, in my opinion, is quite great, and I think that's what he's
sure,
relying on there. And he's showing that he isn't the same player. He can
sure.
bring different things to the table, and I think that's one of the biggest positives that we can take, like you said, from this game and from his performances since the start of the second half. He's been rising to the occasion. And yeah, just from a defensive standpoint, his game has been very, very solid. I think the offensive part will come. I think over the last few games, you've seen him shoot maybe a little bit more, try to
Yeah,
take a couple chances on goal and stuff like that. They haven't been terrible chances at all. So I think that part of his game will come. But the defensive side has been very, very clean so far. And yeah, I just love that he's taking his own path and not, I guess, following the exact footsteps of his brother.
sure. Similar roles, similar positions, but just different
Similar,
player profiles. And we've mentioned that a handful of
exactly.
times. Trying to think of other individual shout outs here. We talked about Reggiani already, but for him to get a yellow card early on in the first half, that did make me nervous. You look at the bench and there's not many of any other like reinforcements to come on or tweak in this game. And you saw in Leipzig, Rierson drop back into that back three, and you could, predict that that was probably going to happen in other games, but Reggiani played the whole 90 minutes here and put on a pretty mature performance. So shout out to him. Bayern Girassi picking up their form more and more as the games go on and the spring comes along. Do you have any other individual performances here or just any general takeaways before we get into Leipzig?
No, I think you covered it very succinctly, Carver.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, looking forward to this second leg against Atalanta. We're in a good spot. In a good spot in sense against Atalanta. And then, of course, after that, you have the likes of either Arsenal or Bayern, which is very scary as Dortmund
Very.
pick up knocks here and there. And we still have a lot of football to be played here in these next few weeks. But either way, we will take the win, build on our confidence, and go into the weekend against Leipzig away, a place where we have not gotten any points in the last 5 meetings, which, you know, as much as we hate Leipzig, it's beginning to get a little scary going there these past few years. But outside of that, though, BVB remain unbeaten in their 16th consecutive league match going into Saturday. The last defeat, crazy to think about, February 23rd, as we're recording, our last defeat was against Bayern still on October 18th in the league. So, you know, that
Yep.
negative streak was broken against Leipzig. We actually get a point here. And then outside of that, Reggiani getting another start, this time his Bundesliga debut. And, you know, he made the Champions League debut, but now he's here in the Bundesliga. Sabitzer returning to the starting 11 after missing 6 competitive matches. We go into it with a 1-3-4-1-2. This time, instead of Brandt at the 10, Sabitzer. And then you have the front two of who was that? I was also Girassi and Bayer. Am I mixing that up? Let
No,
me double check.
you're
Yeah,
100%
yeah.
right. It was Bayern Girassi.
Yep. And outside of that, Leipzig have only won one of their last 5 competitive matches. They were recently eliminated in the Pokal to Bayern Munich. They're no longer in a Champions League spot. They had most recently a 2-2 draw against Wolfsburg as well. So Dortmund come in with a bit more form, a bit more confidence than Leipzig, but still, I was pretty concerned going into this one. And Leipzig really took it to us in that first half. Very, very worrying, as it was far too easy for Red Bull to create opportunities to score with diagonal balls down the left-hand side. Raum picking up those diagonal balls, getting those crosses in right in front of goal. BBB could not cope with that whatsoever. Catching us off guard in front of goal. I counted 4 times. They scored 2 off of them, but I counted 4 in just the first half of that
The
same
exact
exact
same
play.
play. Yep. Yep.
And, you know, obviously, if you're going to find what works, you're going to play to your strengths, and you're going to keep abusing it, which is all credit to Leipzig for doing that. But yeah, Dortmund could not cope with that the entire first 45 minutes. But not to get too ahead of that, did you have any thoughts on the starting lineup or just those opening first few minutes of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the opening minutes were fairly open because we also had our chances on our side. Obviously,
Yeah,
you already mentioned Leipzig's cookie cutter chances. Initially, when I was watching, I was like, okay, like they're putting Diomande on that side to exploit Reggiani, which fair play.
yeah,
It showed later on when they switched him to the right that that's what the plan was. But
sure.
even when they switched him onto the right, he was still causing havoc on that side too. But just kind of like looking at those chances, like yes, it was I guess Diamande's efforts and kind of isolating Reggiani, but it was also the rest of the defenders like Rierson and Anton weren't able to cope with Baumgartner's I guess run from deep, which was very interesting to me. They just looked a little bit kind of like lost for ideas there, so that might be a little bit concerning. You don't want that to end up being kind of like a template that other teams look at and they're like, oh, okay, like this is how we can kind of exploit that.
Yeah,
So I want to hope and say like that this was kind of maybe just like a one-off thing. But I mean, like, yeah, like I said, I mean, we had our own chances too. Bayer had that early chance where he basically, had that run, got the ball under the defender's legs. And had a shot. Maybe perhaps he could have squared it to Girassi or a little bit of a pullback there as well. That might have been an idea, but he's also in good form now, so he probably fancied the shot. So like, why not? So I don't fault him for that.
yeah, no,
Um,
no.
but yeah, I mean, it was a very it was a very contested game. I do think that we did do well coming away with the 2-2 because when I was talking in our like fan club group chat, I was kind of just saying like how many times have we seen this game go like in the past 3 to Leipzig or
Sure,
another team,
sure.
as opposed to Dortmund coming back. So I was just happy that happened. Granted, when we were talking about it on our pod, I was saying I have requirements, not expectations. I wanted to see a 4-0 win against Leipzig is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
I also wanted to kind of shout out Ben Sebaini in this game as well, because he did have quite a few good moments as well. He did get the yellow card, which wasn't great, but when Rile Baku came in the second half and was going to put the ball in the net with that chance that he had, Ben Sebaini had a really good block in that situation, and he's been doing
Yep.
quite a lot of that, kind of like what you mentioned as well earlier when we were speaking about Atalanta, and he's done that a fair few times this season, so big up him. But yeah, I'm just happy that we showed the fight that we did. Obviously, big shout out to Fabio Silva as well for coming on, scoring his first Bundesliga goal, and how against who? Amazing. Like that honestly like gave me chills because the guys needed the goal, and to score it against Leipzig in such an important game, chef's kiss.
Yeah. It's so deserved too. I mean, he brings on so much energy, and his work rate is just unbelievable every time he comes
100%.
on. Credit to him, and I'm glad he finally got that weight lifted off his shoulders. And he scored before, but his first Bundesliga goal is very encouraging, of course. I'm just taking it back because you made a lot of great points. Baumgartner, he's been a thorn in our side for quite some time now. In the reverse fixture in the fall, too, it was the same way when we were at home. He scored one goal, if not two, I think, in the Leipzig game in that reverse fixture. I'm surprised we didn't take a bit more note of him there, especially the back line.
Mm-hmm.
It was far too easy for him to find space. It was far too easy for him to find routes to goal, completely uncontested for that first 45. But outside of him, I mean, Leipzig just tend to have a pretty deadly front line of attackers who are gifted with the ball at their feet, so they can pick up those diagonal balls. They're able to get very solid first touches, hold the ball up. They can take on 1v1s. I like Diamande, like you mentioned too. So there was a lot for us to handle in that first half, and we didn't do a good job of coping with that at all. There were moments of transition, like you mentioned, especially early on. It seemed a bit more open, but Leipzig continued to grip further and further and get more control of the game in that first half. And I was surprised that we were only going into halftime 2-0 down. I think the last time we failed to score in a game was actually against Leipzig last spring, and it was like March of 2025 when we
Mm-hmm.
lost 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
So I was nervous going into halftime, but I also was a little bit thankful. It could have easily been 3 or 4-0 at
Mm-hmm.
that point. But Kovac made some adjustments, of course, and we came out in the second half with a bit more intensity, of course, with a bit more desire
Mm-hmm.
to defend, but just a
Right.
strong reaction in general to really grind themselves back into the game. We got a goal 5 minutes into the second half. Dortmund started attacking a bit more vertically,
Mm-hmm.
runs in behind. The
Mm-hmm.
substitutions made a great change in just the feel of the game, and momentum
Right.
shifts as well. And we not only had the desire to equalize, but even push on for potentially a winner. And it didn't
Right.
come into fruition, of course. But considering the first half was so passive, and we're missing key players, but I'm really proud of the way that the team was actually able to leave there with a
Come
point.
back.
I did not think it was even in contention at
Mm-hmm.
halftime. So yeah, credit to the guys for that for sure. I mean, Silva, there's a very smart finish there. It was a great cross from Adeyemi, but just to be able to cut it across back into goal right under the keeper's legs, very, very smart and clean, tidy finish from Silva there.
That
Fifth
whole
time we've
goal.
also
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry to cut you off. I was gonna say I just wanted to bring up that whole goal. If you really look at it, it's a whole like yeah, the whole thing is very smart play. If Brandt passes to Silva initially in that play, he's offside. So his decision making there kind of came into play, and obviously passing Adeyemi was the right decision. Adeyemi's cross, like you mentioned, fantastic to get into Silva there, and then Silva's finish just I wanted to shout this out because it was I don't know it was just a very well worked goal.
Yeah,
Just to be able to kind of like just smoothly, just like silky smooth, get that ball in the back of the net. Yeah,
first time on his left foot as well.
exactly.
Yeah, and in the end, we had another opportunity, and I know plenty of people were talking about that online of having another chance to score. But at the end, I guess I take the point. This is the fifth time we've scored in stoppage time this season. I think at least in the Bundesliga. So for better or for worse, this is a team that consistently is experiencing late goals this entire season. I know Jacob and I have talked about it, probably a dozen times at this point,
Mm-hmm.
how many points we've dropped from winning positions whenever we concede, goals in the 75th minute, 80th minute onward. A lot of them, at least 4 or 5, past the 90th minute. But now you're kind of seeing a little bit of a pattern going the other way of us actually clawing our way back to get equalizers in the 90th
Yeah,
minute and onward as well. So, it's a team that, for better or worse, again, is experiencing those late goals, but in this case, kind of worked a bit more in our favor. And I'm happy that we actually left with 1 point. We do keep Leipzig a bit more at bay now. Hoffenheim dropped points at the weekend when they drew to Köln. Leipzig are 11 points behind us, so we're keeping distance between us and teams below us. The gap widens a bit with Bayern here. They played Frankfurt at the weekend, and
I believe
actually,
it's
I was
8.
about to say they were. What's that?
I believe it's 8 right now. 8 points.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought initially they were going to sweep through Frankfurt when they were up 2-0 early on, but Frankfurt actually came back, and they didn't get the results, but came back and Bayern won still 3-2. So they're still up there on the table, but there's still plenty of football to be played. This here at the weekend now, we have a chance to get 3 points back. Do you have any other takeaways from the Leipzig game?
No, I mean, honestly, I applaud their resilience, kind of like echoing everything you've been saying. At the end of the day, there in seasons past, this could have been a game where we could have lost every single point, right? As opposed to, like you said, clawing back and getting a point. And yeah, I just applaud them for being able to do that, because I think that's something that we've kind of learned to do under Kovac, and I guess that's one of the things that I respect him for, instilling that in this team, and I guess drilling it into them that you're able to claw your way back into these games. And the record speaks for itself. It sucks that we haven't lost since the game against Bayern, and we're still 8 points behind them. But
Right.
There's an irony to that. But on the flip side, it could be so much worse. Like we are in such a stronger position now than we have been in the last few seasons to finish in the top 4. So I'm not going to complain. I'm happy to see the direction that we're going in. We're playing more forward thinking football week to week, and yeah, it's just good to watch.
Yeah, it speaks for the quality of Bayern too. I mean, they continue to just steamroll through the league with so many good
Yeah.
oppositions in the Bundesliga this year as well. So Dortmund again remain unbeaten in the Bundesliga since October, with just one loss this season still. But before we get to Munich, we have Atalanta again in the reverse fixture this week, this Wednesday. Bayern actually have the week off, so they have no midweek football. They will be
Great.
fresh at the weekend. I know that only makes me more nervous, and we're away, of course, for
Yeah.
this fixture as well. How are you feeling going into these next few days?
Not even. Let's take a step back. This whole stretch of games, these 4 games have been and are a critical point in the season, right? They will be make or break in so many different ways.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I think we get past Atalanta. I think it might end up being another 2-0, 2-1, something like that. Um, yeah, like kind of like what we talked about earlier. They still have deficiencies in attack right now with players out, and we've shown that we can break down the defense. So I think that with some rotation involved, like I said earlier, maybe Silva starting, maybe he scores again or something like that. Keeps building that confidence. I think we get past them, and then yeah, our attention's going to have to turn to Bayern. But this is critical as well, simply in the sense that Dortmund need to be getting to the knockout phase, and not even just into the knockout phase, but preferably deeper into the Champions League. But of course, kind of like what you mentioned, once we're past Atalanta, then we have either Bayern or Arsenal. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and you mentioned the word rotation. I think that word is key going into this week. Now that the game is on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, that extra 24 hours is huge. I mean, not for us,
It
of
is.
course, but it's so important for us to get things right to make sure that we are match ready, that we are match fit going into Saturday. And thankfully, I think we have a bit more room to wiggle with here going into this
Yeah.
game with in terms of that rotation. So you mentioned Silva, of course. I think we could see a bit more of Kuto at this game potentially, especially
Chukwemeka,
with the
maybe.
cushion of a Chukwemeka, exactly. Plenty of other players too. I mean, with the
Mhm.
2-goal cushion, you don't want to be throwing out everyone that's never played really
Right.
much before the season, but you do have a little bit more leverage there. And Kovac should, I mean, I think he's smart enough to be using that because we have to be ready for Saturday. You come out with those first 45 minutes against Leipzig and you try that against Bayern, I guarantee you it's not going to be just 2-0 going into halftime.
Yeah.
And that's going to be at home too. So it's going to sting, a lot more. The crowd's going to be letting the team feel it. So if we can go into that a bit more rested with a bit more rotation, be in the right headspace, hopefully going past Atalanta with more confidence, we're going to be in a really good spot. And I think it could be a very competitive game against Bayern. And, I know it's going to be extremely difficult, but I could definitely see a world going into next week where we get not only a win against Atlanta, but a result against Munich. Hopefully, all 3 points to shorten that gap. I don't see why this team couldn't do it. It's one of the best opportunities we've had in quite some time. And it's one of the first few times in several years now where we're actually playing at home in the spring as well. So I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, and just like we're going into the game with a few injuries, Bayern also aren't going to be at full strength. I think Manuel Neuer is still going to be out. I think they'll
Yep.
probably have Jonas Urbig in goal, and he obviously hasn't been starting too many games this season with Neuer in goal. So there's that to think about. I believe Alfonso Davies is also out for the game. And on the flip side, I don't know if there's been any news recently, but at least last week there was still speculation that Nico Schlotterbeck might be able to make it for this game.
Yeah.
So having him back would be a massive boost. So yeah, I mean, there's reason for optimism. Like we definitely like kind of like what you said. This is a very good chance to get not just points but all 3 points, especially considering it's a
Sure.
home game. So I'm expecting them to fight no matter what. And even in the loss against Bayern in October, I still think that that was one of the best performances that we've had this season. Like, yes, it was a stupid mistake from Job for the own goal. Okay, whatever. But in the second half of that game, I feel like we overall were the better team. So we've shown that we're
Yeah.
able to fight. We've shown we were able to take the fight to them in Munich. Why
Yeah.
can't we do that at
Yeah.
home, right?
Yeah, we've done that the past few times as well. I mean, we won at Munich, what, 2 years ago now? So, I mean, it's that psychological barrier has been broken, and the
Right.
team's got a little bit more confidence just playing against the likes of Bayern now. And like you mentioned, Schlotterbeck could be potentially back, which is obviously huge, not only for the back line, but just that left-hand side of the team as well. So, Svensson's been running to the ground a lot this past year or so. Could be an opportunity for him to get some rest and rotation at the week at some points, whether it's Atalanta or Munich. Benzebaini could slot into the wing-back role if needed. Just gives us a bit more wiggle room on that left side in general. So we all just got to pray, and hopefully we can get past Atalanta and just worry about the weekend. It's a very short window between the two games, but either
Yeah.
way, we still have a little bit of time here to work out some other tweaks. But yeah, that's all I got here. Brian, do you have anything else for us?
No, I think we covered everything pretty comprehensively. So yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to plug for us?
Sure. Yeah, you can find our work or my work and the other guy's work from Dortmund Dispatch at Dortmund Dispatch on all our socials. Our pod is usually up every either Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on when our editors get to it. But yeah, come join us there too if you want more Dortmund content.
Always a pleasure, Brian. Always one of our besties, one of our first ever guests, and still coming on to routinely give us a great time on the show. So always appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Be on the lookout here for the listener. We have a live stream planned here in the next week or so. We also have a few more guests lined up, and we'll be back a bit more regularly here this spring going forward. So appreciate your patience. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Make sure to give us a rating if you'd like, and we will see you hopefully after we get 3 points against Bayern Munich
Here's hoping.
and advancing in the Champions League, of course, as well. So
Of course.
we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, Carver.